A controversial pardon for President Biden's son. Bipartisan concern over President-elect Trump's pick to head the FBI, and Canada's Prime Minister comes calling to talk immigration and trade, as well as tariffs. Hi, everyone. I'm Sean Caleb, sitting in for Anna Naidu, and this is The Heat. Canadian officials are stepping up border security in a visible and muscular way following Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's Friday dinner at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump. The president-elect is threatening to impose tariffs on Canada and other nations over concerns about the number of illegal migrants and drugs coming into the United States. This as Donald Trump continues to fill roles in his upcoming administration. His latest nominee for FBI Director, Kash Patel, has been met with bipartisan concern on Capitol Hill. And then there's the current president, Joe Biden, reversing his earlier pledge, Mr. Biden giving his son Hunter a full and unconditional pardon for federal crimes committed over the past decade. CGTN's Nathan King has more in this report.
This full pardon for his son comes despite President Biden saying time and time again that he would not issue a pardon. But in a turnaround with just 50 days left in office, he basically said that his son Hunter does not now face prison charges for federal conviction for illegally buying a gun and tax evasion charges because of this full pardon. Let me read you part of a statement that Joe Biden issued just as he was taking off for his Africa trip. He says, "No reasonable person who looks at the facts of Hunter's cases can reach any other conclusion that Hunter was singled out only because he is my son, and that is wrong. I hope Americans will understand why a father and a president will come to this decision." Now, Hunter Biden issued a statement too, as you know, the only surviving son of President Biden, whose family has been marred by tragedy, and he'd been battling drug addictions and other addictions for many years when he says these crimes were committed. And he's become a cause celeb in Republican circles. Remember, they accused the Biden administration of basically ignoring Hunter's family businesses in Ukraine and elsewhere, accusing the Biden family of somehow enriching themselves. They had hearings. His laptop was found with salacious pictures on it. And then, of course, these court cases. Now, even Biden's praisers, but a lot of his critics have come out and said, why are you doing this pardon after you said you wouldn't do so? They also say it really gives a green light for Donald Trump to use the pardon. In fact, Donald Trump, president-elect, issued a statement saying, "I see there's no January 6th insurrectionists or hostages," as he called the rioters on that day in 2020. He has hinted he would pardon them if he comes back into office. In fact, Trump used the pardon in his first term against his former campaign manager, Paul Manafort, was pardoned. Charles Kushner was given a pardon for tax evasion and other charges. And he's just nominated Charles Kushner to be ambassador of France in his second administration. What this will do is basically suggest not just President Biden, not just President-elect Trump, but essentially the justice system here in the US has been weaponized for political gain and continues to do so. Nathan King, CGTN, just outside the White House.
Okay, clearly a lot to talk about. Let's get straight to our panel. Bill Crane is a political analyst and commentator. Aaron Maté hosts Pushback with Aaron Maté on the Gray Zone. Also with us, Douglas Sloan, a Democratic strategist and a principal with the National Capital Strategy Group. And Eric Bolling, a best-selling author and host of the Bolling Podcast. I want to thank all of you for taking time to chat with us tonight. A lot to get to, as I mentioned. Eric, I want to start with you. Let's begin by taking a look at the fallout from what President Biden did, giving his son a full and unconditional pardon. And by all accounts, this is just a really broad blanket of clemency. And people pointing back to the only thing they can even point to that is familiar is when Gerald Ford assumed the president's office after Richard Nixon resigned, and then granting Nixon that massive clemency as well. I want to get your thoughts on what Biden did after saying he would not give clemency to Hunter Biden.
Thanks, Sean. Exactly the reason why. Look, there was no question in my mind that once they replaced Joe Biden with Kamala Harris in the way they did it, that Joe had no problems cutting ties with the Democrat Party. So what is this? This is Joe going back on 4+ years more so, because I think this was even asked prior in the debate before he was president. If you were president, would you pardon your son if he was found guilty of things? And he said, no, it's been consistent. So my problem isn't that a politician in in DC lied to us, or the highest politician in America lied to us. They all do. They lie through their teeth. Their lips are moving. They're lying. It's that he consistently said he wasn't going to do it. Jill Biden said he wasn't going to do it. Karine Jean-Pierre went out and said he wasn't going to do it. Countless hosts, TV hosts on the right, in left-wing media said he wasn't going to do it, and he did it. So it's not so much that he did something that I personally am not shocked he did. Figured he would. I likely believe he'll do his brother next too. Maybe even it will pardon himself going forward. I don't know. He doesn't care about the Democrat Party. It's that he lied, and it's just so tiring to have these politicians lie and lie and lie right to our face.
Okay, Eric, I guess Trump's critics will say, look, it's not like he gave his son-in-law's father a cushy job going to France as the ambassador there after pardoning him. Do you see any kind of symmetry there?
No, I'll tell you what I do see. Unfortunately, Joe Biden ratcheted up what you can do, how you can use the pardon power, the power of that pen as you're leaving office. And I tell you, I can't imagine what Donald Trump's going to do before he leaves. I can't imagine the number of people he's going to pardon. He may pardon his whole family going forward, which probably has never been done either. And so when you take it to the extreme, you say you're not going to do it, and then you do it, and then you take it to something that's never been done before in the history of American politics. You've opened the can of worms, and you've handed the ball to a guy who is not afraid of doing things that are frankly wildly out of the box and unexpected. Yeah. It's a dangerous place Biden has put us in.
Douglas, pick up on that, because I think that Eric has a point there, that this could be ratcheting things up, and there is this belief that now raw politics has simply wormed its way into something like this where you do grant pardons. Do you think that this is going to be one of the legacies of Biden moving forward? This is what people could remember him in part for.
Well, first off, let me pick my jaw up off the floor. I can't remember a time where Eric Bolling has been this frank and straightforward and honest about what's going on in American politics. So I would like to commend him for that. But going forward, yeah, this is gamesmanship. This is politics. We are living in unprecedented times now. There are more people accused of sexual misconduct among Trump's cabinet picks than in the history of the country. I mean, so yeah, is Biden going to pardon his son, when especially if Hunter's last name wasn't Biden? He would have never been prosecuted by DOJ for this stuff. They would have looked this over and maybe, yeah, they wouldn't even bother to prosecute him. But the fact that his last name is Biden, and the fact that this all was politicized, of course, we're going to see Biden, who puts his family first and foremost and loves his family above all else. Of course, he's going to do something to ensure that his son isn't going to prison. And in these highly politicized times, we were looking at prosecution that would have never happened if he wasn't the president's son. So in response to your question, in terms of what Eric was saying, does this put us in dangerous times? Does this put us in a dangerous position? Does this set a dangerous precedent? I think Trump set the dangerous precedent back in 2016 when he first entered office, and with all of these out of the box, to use Eric's term, potential appointments we see going forward with Kash Patel, who says he wants to shut down the Hoover building on the first day in office, and Tulsi Gabbard and JFK and Pete Hedgecraft. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing his name. But yeah, I think Trump set the precedent on doing things out of the box, and Democrats are finally just starting to catch up.
Okay. Aaron, let's talk about what President Trump could do, because he has referred to the demonstrators, the people who got arrested on January 6th, as hostages. Some 1,250 have been charged with crimes, 750 have been sentenced. And now there's the potential that he could step up and pardon these folks. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I think you could make the case that for anyone who took part in January 6th who wasn't engaged in violence, that there was overzealous prosecutions. Do we need to imprison the QAnon shaman, for example, for many months in prison because he entered the Capitol building unlawfully? So I do think there is a case to be made that some of these people were overzealously prosecuted. Same can be said for Hunter Biden. I agree that if his last name wasn't Hunter Biden, he probably would not have seen these cases. But why did the DOJ feel compelled to make an example of Hunter Biden? It's because previously they did abuse the system to go after Trump and his supporters. Recall that Trump was basically framed as a Russian asset. The FBI relied on Clinton-funded conspiracy theories, known as the Steele dossier, to monitor members of Trump's campaign. And that was a huge weaponization and abuse of the government's powers to go after a political opponent. In this case, someone who turned out to be the sitting president. And that whole Russiagate controversy engulfed and seriously undermined the first few years of Trump's presidency. So everyone has taken part in weaponization, and it's hard to find anyone who has their hands free here. And certainly Biden, in going back on his promise, is continuing with that tradition, and Trump will undoubtedly pick up where he left off.
Bill, I want to get you to weigh in on this, then we're going to move on and talk about President-elect Trump and where this country is going. But I want you to take kind of a holistic look, if you will, at the whole pardon situation. Because is there the chance that the way these pardons are being doled out, that is basically adversely affecting this time-honored tradition of a jury of your peers being punished for something that you did and then having to live with those results?
Bill Clinton did it on his way out of his second term at the height of his popularity. It's not new for presidents to take care of people who've been substantial donors, who have been at an earlier point in time involved in their administration. I do think this is a dangerous precedent. It's a child of a member of the presidency. And with due respect to my colleagues, Hunter Biden did pay income taxes on some untold millions of dollars in consulting fees and didn't report his income from out of country sources when his father was president of the United States and vice president of the United States. And those are prosecutable offenses. So I think it does open the floodgates, if you will, for President-elect Trump to pardon himself, to pardon members of his family, as he already did in his first term when he pardoned Paul Manafort. And I would expect more of this. Now, I also think it's troubling when you try to justify it by saying this is all politics, because it was Joe Biden's Justice Department, Joe Biden's U.S. attorneys who prosecuted Hunter Biden's laptop, who prosecuted the Burisma case, who prosecuted the tax fraud and the gun charges. So you can't really claim that was caused by Donald Trump with a straight face.
Yeah. Eric, let's move on. Let's talk about one of the cornerstones of Donald Trump's campaign, his successful race for the presidency, and that was toughening up the border, mass deportations. It's something that really struck a chord with people across the United States. And now you have California officials who are basically telling local law enforcement officials not to cooperate with federal officials when it comes to these deportations. I want to get you to listen to California U.S. Senator Alex Padilla talking about that prospect. Here's what he had to say.
No state government, not Texas, not California, not any state in the nation, has a constitutional authority to impose federal immigration law. That is the responsibility of the federal government. Some states like Texas want to push the envelope and try to find a way to assist, but there's no obligation to do so. And that's what California leaders and municipal leaders throughout the state are saying. You know, we're not going to utilize state and local resources to do the federal government's job for them. There doesn't have to be a conflict unless that's what Trump wants.
Okay, Eric, the interesting part about this, incoming Trump border czar says that any law enforcement that does not cooperate with the United States is going to be prosecuted for federal law.
So I take issue with what the congressman said. I think he's completely wrong there. That's not what these people are saying. I mean, the Governor Newsom in California, the mayor of Denver saying they're not going to deport when they've been told to deport. The difference is that the Fed, the way this works is it a federal offense or is it a state offense? If it's not a state offense, do the feds intervene, like marijuana, for example, or it's illegal on the federal level, but they let states do what they want to do because they choose to. They can enforce marijuana laws if they wanted to, but they don't. This, I believe, will be enforced at the federal level. I believe that mayor, if he defies the federal order to deport the illegals who are there, he will likely be prosecuted by Tom Homan in the Justice Department. Remember, there's a new sheriff in town, and things will change. They will change. This will be one of those drastic changes. If I may, very quickly, before we came to air about 2 hours prior, Trump put out a truth that said to the Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran, unless those hostages are released by when I'm sworn in January 20th, he'll unleash hell on them. And guess what? I believe he will. So when Trump says he's going to go after anyone who refuses the deportation mandate and order from the feds, he'll go after them. I believe he will.
Yeah. And Douglas, to pick up on what Eric is talking about, absolutely. Tom Homan has basically said that Trump is going to follow through and have these mass deportations. Here's some of what he had to say.
President Trump is going to shut down the border. We're going to have a massive deportation operation, and we're going to try to find over 300,000 children that were released by this administration. I guarantee you, some are in forced labor, some are in the sex trade. We're going to save those children and get them back to their families.
Okay, I want to get your take on what Homan had to say, because a lot of people have been very concerned about the way that these deportations could theoretically be handled, and secondly, separating children, again, the children in cages, and then the Trump administration focusing on the fact that there are very young people from Mexico, other Latin nations coming to this country, working in roofing, slaughterhouses, other dangerous jobs. How do you balance that? Do the facts add up?
Well, unfortunately, I think that what we're looking at is the Trump administration ready to apply battle axe to something that maybe requires a scalpel. You know, I am not, nor would I believe most Democrats are not, against forcing immigration laws. The border crossings are at the lowest level they've been in years under Biden right now. And they called Obama the deporter in chief because of all the deportations that happened under his administration. So it's not about ignoring the law. We all want to follow the law and ensure that we are adhering to the tenets of the U.S. Constitution. But perhaps having such a dull, heavy-handed approach to the very intricate problem of immigration is not the best way to go about it. And I think that's the main issue that we're looking at.
Interesting. Aaron, President-elect Trump, we've talked about the tariffs, 25% on goods from Canada and Mexico, unless they stem the flow of not only migrants, but also drugs. Prime Minister Trudeau down here in Mar-a-Lago, breaking bread with Donald Trump, trying to find a way forward. Clearly, he's concerned about what these tariffs could do. Some numbers here. As of November 6th, the U.S. Customs and Border Protection has seized about 20 kilos of fentanyl from its northern border, and the U.S. goods trade deficit with Canada is expected to be about $55 billion this year, $78 billion back in 2022. And Canada, for its part, is coming back against the United States with retaliatory tariffs. Firstly, your take on that. And secondly, the way tariffs work. Is this going to work the way Donald Trump wants it to generate money for the United States? Or is it simply going to make all of us pay a lot more for the goods that we're already paying a lot for now?
Well, that's certainly the argument that people like Justin Trudeau are making in opposition to these tariffs. I suspect, and I'm no expert on this, that Trump is just issuing this threat as a bargaining tactic to obtain better leverage for what he sees as the U.S. economic interest. I strongly doubt he will go ahead with the maximalist version of the threats he's made when it comes to tariffs. Then again, it is Donald Trump, and he has said that his favorite word in the dictionary is tariffs. So you never know with him. But I suspect this will be used. This is sort of an art of the deal thing, pushing for maximum leverage at the bargaining table so he can get a deal that he thinks is better for workers. Certainly, he faces a lot of opposition, not just from foreign leaders like Trudeau, but from the U.S. corporate elite as well, who don't want to see prices for their goods and for their spending on the products that make their goods rise exponentially.
Bill, Mexico's president, Claudia Sheinbaum, she is a tough cookie, and she's also very confident that a tariff war with the United States can be averted. And Trump and she had a very famous phone call where they talked about, can you stop migration at the border? And Trump coming out and saying that the Mexican president promised to do so. She came out and said that wasn't the way the conversation played out. Here's a bit about what she did have to say.
Nos vamos a poner de acuerdo.
We will reach an agreement. I'm convinced of that. We will defend our sovereignty and respect Mexicans, respect Mexico, and the collaboration a government must have with another government, and a trade partner with another trade partner, especially such important trade partners. Then, if it were to happen, by all means, we have a plan, but the goal is for it not to happen.
Okay, so simply put, is there going to be a tariff war with Mexico and other nations?
Other nations, I think we will see, particularly China. The North American Free Trade Agreement, which came into law in the 1990s, is part, along with the technology innovation and the internet, of what spurred our economy to some record highs and 3 balanced budgets, with Bill Clinton in the White House and Newt Gingrich as Speaker. North America's 3 leading economic superpowers, United States, Canada, and our trade partner in Mexico, are each other's 3 strongest trade partners. There were some loss of manufacturing jobs that we're still feeling pain points from here in the United States, but it also drove prices down. If we start charging 10 or 20 or 25% tariffs on both ends, there's no way that doesn't further feed inflation and make its way, unfortunately, into the American pocketbook. This was an election, as much as anything else, about the economy, not just pro-Donald Trump and anti-Joe Biden and anti-Kamala Harris. This was about getting the economy back on track. Tariffs can produce revenue. He showed that in his first term, and they will produce revenue. But if you overcharge tariffs, it makes its way into the price lines that consumers pay, that businesses pay, and you get into a trade war where certain industries start shutting down. No, I don't think that's where we'll go with Mexico and Canada.
You know, Bill, quickly, I think it's also fascinating what you just talked about, because this is an election. Kamala Harris has to run on the record where she was vice president. And the economy, there's no question, the people in the U.S. are paying significantly more for everything than they were 4 years ago. But recent stories have come out, and people who were so critical ahead of the election saying the security of elections was going to be the biggest concern. The state of our economy is another huge concern. After the election, they're saying, you know what? Our elections are pretty secure, and our economy is better off than we really think it is. But that really is the way politics kind of works, isn't it?
Well, you say a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth if it's not refuted. And so Donald Trump saying that during his term in the White House, the economy was the best it's ever been, by some measures, but not by all. And you know, we're a $7 trillion a year economy. I mean, you compare any other country to ourselves, right, with the exception of China, and they're a fraction. So this was about the economy. Immigration was an emotional issue. It was second in most voters' minds. And Donald Trump will begin deportations, but I think he will start with men and women in custody from other countries who have committed felonies we have in custody, who have committed crimes here, or who are awaiting transfer from jails to prison.
Yeah, Eric, let's talk about Kash Patel, Trump's choice to be the new FBI director. Chris Wray still has 3 years left in there, and Wray either has to resign or be fired by Trump. But there's a lot of speculation here in Washington, D.C., that Patel isn't going to be able to get Senate confirmation. How difficult is that going to be? Because I think if one thing this election showed, what Trump is saying is really resonating with people across the United States, whether liberals, Democrats like it or not.
I think Kash, full transparency, friend of mine, I think Kash breezes through the Senate process. I said it here last time prior to Matt Gaetz stepping down, that I think anyone who presents at the Senate, it's a Trump appointee, will get through. Senators are just as dirtbally as the rest of the elected officials in D.C., and they want to keep their jobs. And they know that Trump's here for 4 more years. If they're up in the next 4 years and they get in front of his agenda, he will mow them down. And the ones that are up in 6 years when he's gone were just elected, likely with the endorsement of Trump. So senators can make all these blustery claims they want about not letting someone through. They're all going to let them go through. Kash Patel, very specifically, a great pick from the America First group, the MAGA group, who believes the FBI was weaponized against Donald Trump, for example, with all the lawfare that was going on, going way back to 2016, when Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, 2 FBI agents, were texting each other how they were going to prevent a citizen, Donald Trump, from becoming president. There's countless examples. We talk about the FBI's involvement with the Steele dossier a bit earlier. I think what will happen is Kash has said he will gut the FBI, and that's who Trump is picking. He's picking people that will gut the bureaucracy in New York. And the reason why there's so much pushback is because it's a massive bureaucracy. There are a lot of people who are going to get gutted. so to speak. And I, for one, I'm here. It's what I came to see, and I'm looking forward to the next 4 years of gutting a bloated, overzealous, incompetent U.S. government.
Douglas, not a lot of time left, but I want to talk about Trump and basically the loyalty pledge that he's mandating from everybody, apparently all federal employees as well. So the nomination of Patel, also Pam Bondi as Attorney General. Is there any expectation of a blind judicial system?
Absolutely not. Trump is nominating people that are loyal to him first and foremost, even more so than being loyal to the U.S. Constitution or to the letter of the law or to the United States of America. So Trump is trying to ensure that he's going to have people in place that will not tell him no. Like Bill Barr, right, or General Milley in the first administration, or any number of people that were serving as guardrails to some of his more ludicrous ideas on what he wanted to do in terms of gutting the FBI or draining the DOJ or anything like that. So, yeah, he's trying to really, this time, the first time he didn't think he was going to get elected, so he didn't really have a good idea of how he wanted to do things. Now he's been here before, so he knows exactly what he wants to do, and that is really dangerous for the American people.
Okay, Aaron, about 30 seconds. We know that also Trump, people fall out of favor with him very quickly. What are the chances that these people who do get approved are there a year from now?
Well, Trump had a habit of picking people in his first administration who threw him under the bus, such as John Bolton, who proceeded to, undermine Trump's calls, for example, better relations with North Korea while he was still in office. And since then has been on a campaign to stop him from being president. Perhaps Trump has learned this time to be more judicious in selecting people who will share his agenda. We'll find out very soon.
Okay. Eric, I just want to end with you real quickly. We only have about 20 seconds or so, but on this program a long time ago, you thought Trump would be the last Republican president elected in your lifetime. Given what happened in this past election and this MAGA movement, do you stand by that?
I do. Unfortunately, for the conservative side, Trump is a once in a lifetime person and politician. We'll never see another Trump. And the country is clearly moving left. I'm a libertarian. Conservatives can't embrace libertarianism yet. I think for the rest of my life, probably the foreseeable future, if his name isn't Donald John Trump, he ain't going to be president. I don't mean Junior either.
Okay. Eric and the team, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for your all's insight and opinions. That does it for this edition of The Heat. I'm Sean Caleb's in Washington, everyone. Thanks for watching.